Welcome to Devotionary, where we make the Bible accessible and applicable. A large portion of the Book of Deuteronomy is dedicated to Moses' recitation of the law to the people of Israel. It was vital to Moses that they understood the seriousness of the law and God's expectation that they live in obedience to it. He was determined that they have the right kind of leadership in place to ensure their compliance with all of God's commands. And in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 9 through 13, as Moses prepares to turn over the reins of leadership to Joshua, he calls on the priests and elders to assist Israel's new leader in the faithful execution of his God-given responsibilities. The entire nation was expected to do all that God had called them to do, and Moses was letting the priests and elders know that they had a vital part to play. He supplied them with a copy of the law and commanded that one day, every seventh year, it be read to the entire nation. Then Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, at the end of every 7 years, at the set time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place that he will choose, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and little ones, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, and be careful to do all the words of this law, and that their children who have not known it may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. Deuteronomy 31, verses 9 through 13. Moses is about to commission Joshua as his official replacement. But before he conducts that auspicious ceremony, where he will turn over the leadership of the people of Israel to his successor, Moses called together two other groups of God-appointed leaders. One was the priests, who are all members of the tribe of Levi. God's appointment of them as priests is recorded in the book of Numbers. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Bring the tribe of Levi near, and set them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister to him. They shall keep guard over him and over the whole congregation before the tent of meeting, as they minister at the tabernacle. They shall guard all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, and keep guard over the people of Israel as they minister at the tabernacle. And you shall give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are wholly given to him from among the people of Israel. And you shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall guard their priesthood. But if any outsider comes near, he shall be put to death. Numbers 3, verses 5 through 10. The tribe of Levi had been set apart by God as substitutes for the firstborn sons of Israel. As a result of his sparing of all the firstborn male Israelites during the final plague in Egypt, God had claimed them as his own. They were to be dedicated to him. But he later appointed the Levites to serve in this role. They would be the tribe from which the priestly order would come, the men who would serve in the tabernacle and offer sacrifices to God on behalf of the people. So these men played an important role in the lives of the Israelites. The second group of leaders Moses called upon was comprised of the elders of Israel. Back during the days when Israel was making their way from Egypt to the land of Canaan, Moses had become overwhelmed by the weight of his leadership responsibilities. So God had provided him with a solution. Then the Lord said to Moses, Gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting. And let them take their stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there. And I will take some of the Spirit that is on you, and put it on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you may not bear it yourself alone. Numbers 11, verses 16 through 17. The nation of Israel had grown too large for one man to lead effectively. So God provided Moses with a system for delegating authority among a group of well-qualified men. Their job was to come alongside Moses and to help him bear the burden of judging and leading the people. And as Moses prepared to turn over leadership to Joshua, he wanted the sons of Levi, who served as priests, and the elders of Israel to understand that they would play an important role in the future of the nation. Moses provided them with a copy of the law and with instructions to guard it and protect it. This document was going to be vital to the nation's spiritual well-being. It would be the key to Israel experiencing the blessings of God. And Moses instructed these men to set aside a day every seventh or sabbatical year on which they would call for a national assembly and read the law in the hearing of the people. At the end of every seventh year, the year of release, during the festival of shelters, you must read this book of instruction to all the people of Israel when they assemble before the Lord your God at the place he chooses. Deuteronomy 31, verses 10 through 11. It was essential that the people remain well educated concerning the content of God's law. Not long after Moses had received the law from God, he had told the people of Israel, "You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 through 9. And God had given a command concerning the kings who would eventually reign over the nation. When he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. Deuteronomy 17, verses 18 through 20. By commanding the audible recitation of the law every seventh year by the priests and elders of Israel, Moses was ensuring that the people would have a regular reminder of their commitment to it. Not only that, he tied it to the annual Feast of Booths, which was a commemoration of Israel's release from captivity. As part of the feast, they constructed temporary booths or tabernacles, meant to remind them of the years their ancestors spent wandering in the wilderness on their way to the land of promise. The feast was timed to occur immediately after the fall harvest, and it was accompanied by sacrifices offered in thanksgiving to God for his gracious provision. It was at this joyous occasion that the law was to be read aloud to the entire population of Israel, at the set time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths. Deuteronomy 31, verse 10. And Moses commanded that this solemn convocation was to include the people, men, women, and little ones, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, and be careful to do all the words of this law. Deuteronomy 31, verse 12. No one was to be left out, and an important byproduct of this event was the instruction of their children regarding the law of God. Do this so that your children who have not known these instructions will hear them and will learn to fear the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 31, verse 13. And this reading of the law was to take place every seventh year for as long as the people of Israel lived in the land of Canaan. And since God had promised the land to them as a permanent possession, that meant that Moses expected the priests and elders to see their commitment to holding the solemn assembly as perpetual in nature. It's interesting to note that by placing this reading of the law at 7-year intervals, there would have been thousands of 7-year-old children attending the festival who had been born into the Jewish community during the gap years. These children would have been mature enough to hear the law and understand it. So if they had not had parents who taught it to them, they would at least hear it for themselves on their 7th birthday and every 7th year after that. To say that the law was important to God would be a vast understatement. He cared greatly about his law and was adamant that his people know it and obey it. He wanted them to live their lives by it. He demanded that they remain committed to it. He wanted the leaders of his people to be the protectors and disseminators of it for generations to come. And this law was not just a list of rules to keep. It was written documentation of the commitment the people of Israel had made. They had promised to keep all the commandments of God, and he was not going to allow them to forget the nature of that commitment.